Hey, what's up, folks? This is Tony Bruin, I guess I should say. Don't forget about the locals. I'm still putting stuff over there, and I'm assuming in one day it'll break and folks will find it, and then they'll be like, hey, there's a lot of stuff here. But if you're listening on Christianity Now, if you're listening on YouTube, if you're listening on Rumble, thank you so very much. We're going to talk about the Word of God today, quite literally the Word of God. We're going to discuss the identity of the Word. Notice the thumbnail, the identity of the Word in John 1, 1 through 17. I have spent the last 3 days developing this. I have got 2 pieces of content. I've got this. I got this that I'm going to release today, and then I've got an analysis of a debate. I want to show today, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that irrespective of whatever you believe about the deity of Jesus, you cannot deny that the word in John 1:1 is the word in John 1:14, and the identity, the nomenclature, the name of that word after the word was made flesh is Jesus. And then for some bonus content at the end, we might go to the book of Acts and the book of 1 Thessalonians and show how Jesus is still Jesus and Jesus will be Jesus when Jesus comes back. That the Word has the Word is now Jesus, and Jesus will never be the Word again in singularity. And we'll show that. So just let me cook. All right, we got to land this plane. As folks start coming in, of course, we're probably not going to get a whole lot of people in. This is an odd time. I'm supposed to go live at 1 o'clock my time. That is 11 o'clock Central Standard Time. And I've worked on this all day. And I think I was letting perfection rob me of being effective. So what you're going to get now is what it is. So we're going to put the graphic up, my detractors watching my live stream, and of course my detractors watching it after the fact. This is what you look like. So if you hate my guts, if you're one of my detractors, you're only hurting you. My suggestion is build a snowman and let it go. All right, let's get right into it. First off, I'm going to pull up the live chat in case we do get somebody in. And as we're going through this, ask your questions, comments, observations. I will stay, within reason, I will stay on as long as it takes to answer everybody's questions and deal with everybody's comments, because this is such an important topic. If we get enough people in here all firing questions, I'm subject to be on here till midnight. That's what happened in the old days before Facebook Meta shut down the algorithm. Anyway, that's all we got. Let's go right towards it. Well, where's my document? Oh, hey, Gourd chap. Good to see you. Do y'all know what I'm doing? I don't. All right. The identity of the word in John 1, 1 through 17. The opening verses of John's gospel are among the most theologically significant and logically rigorous statements in the New Testament. The purpose of the present treatise is to set forth, by plain text and logic of language, the identity of the Word. From John 1:1 to John 1:17. That is the purpose of this treatise that I have written. That is the purpose of this live stream. Every claim will be anchored in the Scriptures, avoiding philosophical speculation, doctrinal traditions, and appeals to outside authority. The goal is to follow the text as the narrative unfolds and let its own logic deliver the conclusion. So interpreting John's gospel rightly requires approaching it as a narrative, not as a mere doctrinal treatise. So make no mistake, what I've written is a doctrinal treatise. The book of John should not be read as a doctrinal treatise until you understand what the story is, what the narrative is. Now, once you understand the narrative and you can logically engage with the text, then you can go in and analyze it as a theological treatise. But most people aren't there. Just read the story. It's a story. Many approach John 1:1 and the entire Gospel of John, quite frankly, as if reading an encyclopedia, a religious treatise, or some other formal, sterile kind of document. But John didn't write a manual. He wrote a historical narrative. He gave an account of Jesus' life. He gave an account of his death, his resurrection. The story unfolds with people, events, motives, actions, and meaning. This is not a bullet point of propositions, a bullet point list of propositions. This is a narrative that can be analyzed as a treatise, but if you, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but if you start from the perspective of it as a treatise, a formal treatise, then you're going to miss it. And a lot of people, a lot smarter than me, have looked at the book of John, and they have claimed that John wrote the book of John as a rebuttal, a refutation to the Gnostic doctrine of a certain Cerinthus, which it is the height of irony that people take the book of John, and especially the first 17 verses of the book of John, and they take that and they lift it from its content or their context, and they change the definition of terms, and they equivocate, and they use that to deny the deity of Jesus Christ. The Jehovah's Witnesses, who believe that Jesus Christ and the Archangel Michael are the same created entity, and weirdly enough is the brother to Satan, they don't change 1 John 1 as far as the definition of the terms. They do change the Bible itself. The New World Translation, or New World whatever, I think it's the NWT, it's the Watchtower publication of the Bible, reads something very similar to, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was a God, and they put a lowercase g on the God. So even the Jehovah's Witnesses that do not believe in the deity of Christ, they believe that Jesus was a created being, they do not muck about with the context of the text. They just change the text. This is important because they are admitting that the text as it reads is incontrovertible. The Word in 1:1 is the Word that was made flesh in verse 14, is Jesus identified by John as the mechanism whereby grace and mercy came. How does that read? I can't remember now. Isn't that terrible? Let me get out my little New Testament. John 6, John 4, John 2, John 1, John 1:17. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. So the Jehovah's Witnesses, who are antagonistic to what I'm teaching, that Jesus is deity, they agree with me about the syllogism. They agree with me about the logic. Their solution is to change the writing. If you draw the conclusion that Jesus is not God in the flesh currently, then you have to deny the writing as we have it. That's what the Jehovah's Witnesses do. From a academic standpoint, I respect that more than somebody that just says, see, Jesus went back to be with his God. How can Jesus have a God and be God? Well, that just means you're low IQ. That means you don't have enough bandwidth for any kind of reasonable discussion. So again, interpreting John's gospel rightly requires approaching it as a narrative, not a doctrinal treatise. If we read John's gospel as a sterile document for theological debate, it will lead to ideological capture, and you won't be able to engage with the text and be honest with what the text is revealing, because you have to run it through the frame of Jesus is not deity. The pattern is not unique to John. Every book of the Bible records real history, real people, and God's acts. I cannot stand that word ACTS, acts, and God's acts among them. Anyway, so read the Gospel of John as John intended, a narrative. Let the story reveal what it is meant to reveal. A reader who reduces the Bible to abstract propositions or religious arguments misses what God is unveiling in His Word. That is not to downplay academic pursuit, okay? We must be theologians, but we cannot be theologians unless we are first logicians, unless we're first humans, unless we're first able to reason. So let's talk about the sequence of revelation from the Word to Jesus. The first statement, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. At this point in the narrative, the Word is introduced without definition. No definition is given as to whether the reference is to an abstraction, a principle, an anthropomorphic idea, a personal being, an entity. Nobody knows. At this stage, the narrative leaves open whether the Word is an abstract concept or a personal being. Again, the ambiguity regarding the identity of the Word invites the reader, in my opinion, to continue with the text. Like, I want to know now, well, who is this Word? In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God? That don't make a lick of sense. That seems to be oxymoronic. That seems to be a paradox. So now we've got to let the text unfold. Just let John cook. Let him land this plane. The precise identity of the Word will be clarified as the story unfolds. The Word could be conceived as an idea, a principle, a plan, or a person. This openness is resolved by the progression of the narrative. At this stage, again, I know I'm repeating myself so much here, and I don't want you to be insulted by it, but I'm just trying to set the stage. The Word in John 1:1, actually John 1 through 3, could be conceived as anything. But what we know, the information revealed, the only information revealed is the Word was present in the beginning, the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now that I'm saying this out loud, as I'm reading this out loud, now that I can hear it and process it, as I wrote it, but I read it in my mind. Now that I'm reading out loud, I think I have used repetition for emphasis to the point where it sounds insulting. It's not my intention to be insulting. I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. But if you was dealing with the debate that I was in, you kind of see why I wrote this like I'm talking to a 2-year-old. So maybe I need to fix this before I release it. But anyway, just show some grace and love, and I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. So as the narrative continues, the focus remains fixed. We started with the Word that's not defined, and now we have all things were made by Him, and was not anything, and without Him not anything was made that was made. So here the Word is the agent of creation. So the Word has agency. The Word is both with God, and is not identified as a created being, but as the source of all things. The formal term we're looking for is coetaneous or coeval. All right, let's go and see. Let's get my Oxford English Dictionary out, and I'll look up coetaneous. Do y'all remember where I put my dictionary? Oh, it's right there. Dictionary. Coetaneous. I need dictionary. It's another term for coeval. I ain't joking with you. That's the definition. Good grief, Oxford, you let me down. Coeval, having the same age or date of origin, contemporary. It's a noun, a person of roughly the same age as oneself, a contemporary. So if I had a fraternal twin or an identical twin, I would say that person, we'll name him Ed. Ed and Tony are coeval. Ed and Tony are coetaneous. They have the same point of origin, the same age, the same everything. They're the same point of origin. You cannot have Tony without Ed. You can't have Ed without Tony, because both Tony and Ed have the same origination. Now, this is difficult for us because we don't typically think of God having an origin point. But remember, this is a narrative. And so John is saying, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The idea here is that God and the Word are coetaneous. In your mind, whenever you first ascertained God, You couldn't ascertain God without the word God. This is very, very, this is a linguistic masterpiece here. It's kind of like if I say the word orange, the moment I say the word orange, the concept of orange comes into existence in your mind. As soon as you ascertain the word God, the concept of God comes into being in your mind. So when we allow God to live outside of time and space, we know then that the word God and the entity God are coetaneous, they're coeval. Now, we don't know about their origination in eternity. It's hard for us to conceptualize an is being, an am being. But Jesus said it before Abraham was, I am. God said, I am to Moses. Jehovah God is the I am. Jesus is the I am as well. The Word is the I am as well. That's what coetaneous means. That's what coeval means. I'm getting out of my notes. Let's get back to them. So the narrative remains and continues focused and fixed. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. The Word is the agent of all creation. The Word is both with God, and is not identified as a created being, but the source of all things. At this point, abstraction gives way to clarity, as the text prepares to identify who or what the Word is. The narrative now shifts from general description to the specific act of the Word becoming flesh. So here's the transition. The turning point arrives in verse 14. Now, from verse 1 through 3, from verse 3 to verse 14, we're being told the reason the Word, the light of life, the Word was the light of life. Hold on a second. In him, that's the Word, was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light shineth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. So now we go from an abstraction to a literal. We now know something about the Word. And then we know other stuff about the Word. We have John. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. The same was for what, so he keeps on going. And then in 14, the verse 14 begins the segue to get us into verse 18, or excuse me, the paragraph of verse 19, which is the record of John the Baptizer when he meets Jesus for the first time. So the turning point arrives in verse 14. And this is something after the fact I'll need to go in and really flesh out, because I think I need to add this to the article. What I just said is what I meant. But anyway, so at this stage, any ambiguity is resolved. The Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. The glory is as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. All ambiguity of the text is resolved. This is a literary construct. This is a rhetorical method. The Word, previously undefined, is now revealed as taking on flesh and dwelling among men. The text is not figurative or poetic. It is literal. The grammar, the sequence, all require the reader to recognize the subject of the Word as a person able to be seen and experienced and touched and handled. That's a reference to 1 John 1. The progression in John is a classic case of progressive specification or trans-temporal identity. And I'll if you don't know what that is, you won't be ignorant for long. Whatever or whomever the Word was in the beginning is the same subject being spoken of when the text says the Word became flesh. The narrative does not allow for a change in subject or a shift from abstraction to specific entity or a separate entity. It doesn't allow a shift from abstraction to a separate entity. So with the identity of the Word now situated in time and space, remember, he's outside of time and space when he was in the beginning. He is now in time and space in verse 14. The next logical move in the text is to bring us his name. If you are an entity of will and volition, functioning in this realm of existence, you've got to have a name so you can be differentiated from all the other entities of will and volition. And that name, Jesus, that role, Christ, the Messiah. So Jesus the Messiah, Jesus the Christ. So the next explicit step is in verse 17. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus the Christ. And most Bibles just say Jesus Christ, but there's a definite article built in there. So the narrative leads directly to the identification of the Word with Jesus Christ. The structure of the text leads the reader from an initial, possibly abstract reference to the Word to an explicit historical identification in Jesus. No point exists in the progression where the subject changes. The narrative structure itself requires that all attributes be applied to that are applied to the Word are, by the end of the passage, applied to Jesus Christ. The text contains no indication of a change in referent. By the time the name is introduced, all attributes previously applied to the Word now apply to Jesus. To illustrate this, consider the following analogy. For instance, imagine a man named Tony Bruin. He tells a story about his wife. But for part of the story, she's not yet his wife, nor is she yet named. In the beginning of her life, she was, for instance, Shelley Smith. Shelley Smith lived with her parents in a town, in a state, in a country. Shelley Smith met someone and became Shelley Bruin. Shelley Bruin became the wife of Tony Bruin. So when she became Shelley Bruin, she also became the wife of Tony Bruin. Becoming the wife of Tony Bruin made her Shelley Bruin. Shelley Bruin has not always been Tony Bruin's wife, but she has always been the same person. Now, Tony can truthfully tell a story and say, in the beginning of her life, there was my wife. Even though she was not yet named or married to him. She wasn't named Shelley Bruin, nor married to him at that point. The person he references still is the same across the whole timeline. Her identity does not change, only her role and her name become clearer as the story unfolds. The narrative demonstrates progressive specification and trans-temporal identity. That's an identity that transcends time. In the same way, the Word in John 1:1 is not yet named Jesus, but the identity remains constant throughout the passage. The name is not introduced until verse 17, but all earlier statements about the Word must apply to Jesus, or the narrative's logic collapses. I need to inject here that this does not prove eternal sonship, and that should be a capital E and a capital S. There is a doctrine that says Jesus was eternally the Son and submissive to the Father. That is not true. In fact, there is a real sense in which Jesus is not even submissive to the Father today, because all things in heaven and in earth have been placed at his feet. He's been given head over all things unto the church, which is his body, the fullness of him that filleth all in all. And Jesus came and spake unto them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and in earth. And if you go to chapter 15 of 1 Corinthians, you'll find a verse that says when Jesus returns at the second coming, the day of judgment, he will have then laid down all of his authority, which I believe, and this is conjecture on my part, but I believe he will then either revert back to the spirit form, the Word, just like he was in eternity, or he will continue to be in bodily form Jesus in eternity, but he will no longer be the quote-unquote king, because he will have laid down that rule. But again, all that's window dressing. It's ancillary to our topic. The name is not introduced until verse 17, but all earlier statements about the Word must apply to Jesus, or the narrative's logic collapses. We can work out all of this other stuff later, but we have to get this right. The Word in 1:1, 1:14, and Jesus in 1:17. All the same person. It's the role and the identity that change. Or the role and the nomenclature that change, I should say. Not the identity. The identity is the same. So for the record, the preceding analogy is an illustration. Shelley Bruin is not actually Tony Bruin's wife. I'm Tony Bruin. Y'all know I'm married to a woman named LaBeth. The names are used here for clarity and analogy, not to reflect a real relationship. So let's address attempts to split the narrative. Some claim that the word in John 1:1 is just a quality agent or an abstract principle. The text itself refutes such a claim as soon as it's stated. The word was made flesh. John affirms not that a plan or an idea became flesh, but that the Word who was with God and was God became flesh in personal historical identity. No abstraction or principle can dwell among us and be experienced with glory. Some object claiming the account is no different from the poetic wisdom of I'm getting through this too fast. So here's another objection. All right. Some object, and they claim that the account is no different from the poetic wisdom of Proverbs, personified as a woman. However, Proverbs never claims wisdom became flesh. The genres are distinct. Proverbs uses poetic personification, while John records a direct literal historical claim. To formalize the logical assertions in the text, the argument must now be stated with precision. So let's go to the logical structure. And I hope you understand that point about the Proverbs. You know, where Proverbs is personified as a woman, wisdom rather is personified as a woman. This is not the same, because there's nothing in the text of Proverbs that says, and there was wisdom, and then wisdom became a woman. This is a metaphor. This is not a metaphor in John. It's kind of like adultery. Whosoever shall put away his wife except it be for fornication and marrieth another committeth adultery, so on and so forth. Adultery is not fornication, but you can commit adultery by fornication, by fornicating. In Matthew chapter 5, adultery, Jesus says, is looking at pornography. If you look upon a woman for the purpose of lusting, you have adulterated your marriage. You have committed adultery against God, against your wife. Now, somebody was arguing with me with that. And they said, well, what about John when it says, if you hate your brother, you're a murderer? That's a metaphor. The language in Matthew 5 is not metaphor. Whosoever looketh upon a woman. So you've heard it said by them of old time, ... But I say unto you that if you look and keep on looking upon a woman to lust after her, you have committed adultery already in your heart. That's not metaphorical, that's literal language. That's what's at play here. All right? The wisdom literature in Proverbs is metaphorical when it talks about personification of wisdom as a woman. But if the Proverbs writer said, and now we have wisdom who became a woman, well, that's different. So let's talk about the logical structure. So the argument set formally is this: major premise. Whatever or whomever the word is in John 1:1, the same subject appears in John 1:14 and is named in John 1:17. Minor premise. The Word is with God, the Word is God, the Word is made flesh, and the Word made flesh is named Jesus. Conclusion. Jesus Christ is the Word made flesh, and the Word is God. The structure requires consistency in subject from beginning to end, each premise building upon the last. So the conclusion follows directly from the unwavering identity of the subject. This logical summary anchors the argument within the narrative itself. We've bracketed out all other issues. This logical summary anchors the argument within the text itself, the narrative of the text itself. English, grammar, syntax, semantics, all of this is important because that's how we communicate, and that's how God communicates with us. As the formal structure completes the case, the discussion now turns to consider what the narrative itself demands of the reader and interpreter. But before we do that, I want to go in here and I want to analyze this syllogism. So Here's a logical analysis of the syllogism. Why is the syllogism logically irrefutable? Well, because of its structure and form. The syllogism follows the form of a categorical syllogism. It's a foundational tool in logic. Both premises are explicitly anchored in the text. Each proposition is both scriptural and necessary. So each proposition is both scriptural and it's necessary. Then you have the validity. So the syllogism is valid because the conclusion necessarily follows from the premises. There's no violation of the laws of thought, the law of identity. Each term means exactly what it means at every stage, no equivocation whatsoever. The law of non-contradiction. No claim is made that would allow the subject to be both what it is and what it is not. And the law of the excluded middle. The word is either the same subject or it is not. There is no middle ground. And the syllogism is sound. Every premise is demonstrably true from the text of John 1 through 17. No premise assumes extra biblical tradition or interpretation. Each is derived directly from the inspired words. And then there's progressive specification. The syllogism respects the principle of progressive specification. The identity of the word is clarified but never changed as the text unfolds. No premise introduces a new subject. Each premise carries forward the same subject by logical necessity. And transtemporal identity. The syllogism recognizes the referent, the word, that the referent, which is the word, is consistent from the beginning through its historical manifestation and naming. And then there's exclusive exhaustiveness. No other subject fits the premise. Attempts to insert a different word or to deny Jesus as the referent violate the internal logic of the passage. All right, no other subject fits the premise. Attempts to insert a different word to deny Jesus as the referent and violate the internal logic of the passage. I think I wrote that. I think I left out a word when I was writing that. Anyway, so there is the impossibility of the contrary. This is what's beautiful about this syllogism. Any alternate conclusion either splits the referent or rewrites the text. The referent is the word. You can't split the word and you can't rewrite the text. And we'll talk about somebody that rewrites the text later. So the syllogism exhausts the possible meanings while remaining faithful to the author's language and intent. And here's the thing. If you're an atheist, you would have to draw the same conclusion. If the Bible is a fantastical book that's not true, it's still logically arranged and communicative, and you have to draw this conclusion. No other conclusion is possible. The logical chain is unbroken. John 1:1, the Word. John 1:14, the Word was made flesh. John 1:17, Jesus Christ. The same subject is present at every point. To deny the conclusion is either to violate the rules of logic, misrepresent the grammar of the passage, or to impose a foreign sectarian reading upon the text. And I'll add one, you just change the text, like the Jehovah's Witnesses do. So, the practical use in debating and teaching. Point to the structure. If someone disputes the conclusion, require them to identify which premise they deny and why. Require textual justification. All alternatives must explain the text without changing its subject or grammar. And hold the logical chain. Hold to the logical chain. Any break in the chain must be justified by the text, not by tradition or preference. This syllogism is powerful and valid, or the syllogism is powerful because it's valid, sound, and inescapable. Now let's go back to the document. So, the structure requires consistency and subject from the beginning to the end, and we've shown that. Now let's talk about the narrative's own demands. Every effort to split the subject, that is to redefine the word, to split the referent, which is to redefine the word or the referent as I've called it, or to introduce an agent category from outside the passage, fails to meet the text's own standards. The progression is uninterrupted in the text. There is no warrant to jump from subject to subject or import meanings foreign to the inspired text. Nothing in the passage's grammar or structure allows the word to be split from Jesus, named in verse 17. Jesus does not use metaphor or allegory here. John, rather, does not use metaphor or allegory here. He writes plainly and sequentially, revealing that the Word is with God and the Word is God, and the Word became flesh and is identified by the name Jesus and the role Christ. So the logic and grammar of the narrative lead to one unavoidable conclusion. Jesus Christ is the Word who was with God, who was God, who became flesh. No appeal to agency, abstraction, or poetic device changes this logical outcome. Do with it what you will. You can deny the deity of Jesus, but you can't muck about with the meaning of these verses. The passage stands as a pillar of both theological and logical truth. Jesus Christ is the eternal Word made flesh, fully and truly God. Now, you can deny that, but you can't deny the other proposition. So you've got a problem, and you're forced to do what the Jehovah's Witnesses do, which is just change the text. The Word was a God. So this conclusion, again, follows from every logical and textual step above. The Word existed in the beginning. The Word was with God. The Word was God. The Word became flesh. The Word was made flesh and is explicitly identified as Jesus the Christ. Can anybody help me where I've gone wrong here? Have I gone wrong anywhere? Is this hard to understand? I would hope not. So that's it. What's up, Dinah Harden, Terry Crooks? Good afternoon. And yeah, so I'm going to make some revisions to the document. I don't like how repetitive it is. I think it's good to be that repetitive if you're doing an oration. But for a document, I think it gets tiresome. So I may not get this released today, but I'm going to try. The Substack's taken off. It's really great. We can now, I've got my Substack fixed. If you want to support us, and I'm going to look, I'm over it. I think I'm going to start putting out 4 articles a week, and 3 of them are going to be premium articles. That's just it. I put too much time and energy and work into this not to be paid for it. Because here's the thing, what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to go get a secular job, and I'm going to start working 30 or 40 hours a week outside of the office. And I'm going to have to let this go, not the local work. I can work a secular job and do local work, but I can't work a secular job, do local work, and do this too. That's why I'm trying to make this profitable. It's not that I don't want to do it. It costs money. It costs money to have the premium version of ChatGPT. It costs money to be verified on Facebook. It costs money to have the editing software. It costs money to do all this. I'm not trying to put you on a guilt trip, but I'm trying to let you know, hey, I get it that there's a lot of you that look forward to these every day, and I want to do it, but I've got to be able to do it without worrying about my family's finances. So you might not be able to help monetarily, but I need you to activate to start sharing. I need you to activate and get into the locals. I need you to activate and start taking ownership of the brand if you find that you get value from the brand. I'm never going to stop altogether. But if you like the level of the amount of content I put out, and you like its level, and you want the level to rise, we're going to have to activate as a base. And there's not a lot of us. So anyway, I'm not saying that you need to send me a bunch of money. I'm not saying that if you want to listen to me, you have to pay $5 a month. I don't think you understand how effective it would be. There's 6 people listening to this right now. If every one of you would go to Patreon and just sign up for $1 a month, if we had 300 or 400 patrons at $1 a month, or we had 300 or 400 people on locals that were monetary supporters, I wouldn't have to go get a secular job, and I could keep doing this to the level that people like me to do it. Okay. Maybe I shouldn't be that transparent. Maybe that makes me look bad, but I would rather give you more information than try to not. I'd rather not be shady. I don't want to live in the shade. I want to live in the sunlight. Okay. That's what I'm talking about. And I appreciate that, Diana Harden. Diana said, you explained it well. Thank you. I don't understand why people have problems with this. It's crazy. And like I said, here's the deal. How do I explain this? Or how do I say this? So irrefutable is the text that if you believe that Jesus is not God, if you believe that Jesus is not God, you can't read John 1 through 3. If you understand that John 1:14 through 17 is talking about the Word and Jesus, you cannot read John 1 through 3 and come to any other conclusion but that Jesus is God in the flesh. Jesus is the Word in the flesh. That's why and I'm pointing over here because I have a copy. I'm looking at it right here. I should have brought it over. I have a copy of the New World Translation over there on my bookshelf. In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was a God. That's it. So at least the Jehovah's Witnesses are logically consistent in their denial of Jesus' identity. They're just wrong. All right, that's all I've got, folks. Remember all of the stuff. Remember my invitation to you to help. I'm going to start trying to do some more stuff on Christianity Now on Facebook because I'm starting to see some action there, but it won't be long before everything is on locals. Let me mitigate that. If you all really activate and start sharing and interacting and being very active in the brand, and wherever that is, if that's on Facebook, that's where I'll focus. If that's on Rumble or if that's on locals, that's where I'll focus. All right. I want this to be yours. I will teach, I will put content, and you all can, be a part of that and have some control over it. You can have some control over me. Not too much though. Cause I still say some real heinous, offensive stuff that's provocative, and I'll never stop doing that. That's why that's why there's no congregation that will sponsor me. They don't want to put their stamp of approval. If there is a congregation that will sponsor the Christianity Now brand, I'll talk to you. But just know that I'm gonna say some real heinous stuff that you're not gonna like. It won't be wrong though, and it won't be a lie. It'll be true, but you won't like it. We need people out here like this. That's why those traveling apostles, not the formal apostles that Jesus called, but whenever Paul and Barnabas were sent. Well, now I'm going to have to Google this. Paul and Barnabas were sent and called apostles by the text. Where is that? It's in the book of Acts, by the way. I just can't remember. It's Acts chapter 13, 1 through 3. And let me go to my trusty Rusty and go to the book of Acts. Let's go to 17. Now, when they had passed through Amphipolis and Apollonia, they came to Thessalonica, where there was a synagogue, and Paul, as his manner was, went unto them, and 3 Sabbaths reasoned with them, and opening and alleging. Well, that's not it. It's Acts 13, dummy. Let me get this wrong, read it. All right. Let's see. Now there were in the church that was at Antioch certain prophets and teachers as Barnabas and Simeon, that were called Niger and Lucius of Cyrene and Manaen, which had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch and Saul. And they ministered to the Lord and fasted, and the Holy Ghost separated me, Barnabas, and Saul for the work thereunto I have called them. And when they had fasted and prayed, laid their hands on them, they sent them away. That's not what I was talking about, Google. So Oops, there we go. I really hope that you heard all that. Uh, Diana says she appreciates my transparency. Well, thank you for that. And Gold Trap says, wonderful application. You really have to let go of your way to, or you really have to go out of your way to misunderstand the passage. I appreciate that. Gold Trap, that's what I was thinking. I was talking to this guy, and he couldn't just deal with the text. He would always say, well, you're just thinking Jesus is God. I mean, he was more intelligent sounding than that, but that was his rebuttal to everything I said. Jesus is not God. It's like, I don't just pretend like I don't think Jesus is God. Let's deal with the text. Let's deal with what the text says. Let's pretend I'm an atheist. Let's pretend like this is the 7 Billy Goats Gruff, or the Billy Goats Gruff. Okay? Let's pretend that. Let's pretend this is Jason and the Argonauts. Forget whether or not it's inspired. Deal with what the text affirms. Deal with what the text reveals. All right. Sorry, I got a little up in my emotion there. But anyway, thank you so much, folks. I'm going to stop it here. God bless every one of you. Gold Trap, Diana Harden, Terry Crooks, thank you so much. And and look, I also don't want to downplay. There are some of you folks that are financial supporters, and I thank you for that. I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing without it. And that's really going to stink, is if once our permanent residence rolls in or they tell me to go back to the States and I've got to get a job, get a secular job, it's going to stink for all the people that have supported me monetarily all these years. And the reason I haven't really tried in the past to make this an actual profession is because I haven't needed to. I've been in the States preaching. So now I'm in a position where I'm going to have a secular job. I'm going to have to be a bivocational preacher. Can you imagine how amazing it is to be a bivocational preacher where studying the Bible and speaking about the Bible is your other vocation? Wow, think about that. Anyway, that's my goal. God bless every one of you. Again, I can't do this without you. You helped me so much already, and just full transparency. It's not that I want any more out of you. All I want is interaction, and just every once in a while, just try to make it where you see the stuff to comment and share. Invite your friends, all that good stuff. That's all I'm saying. The audio will be uploaded later on Spreaker, SPREAKER.com. And, yep, that's all we've got. You'll find it on wherever you listen to podcasts. Like, subscribe, and share. Consider supporting us monetarily. The ways to do that are in the show notes. God bless you, and we'll catch you on the flip side.